Representative Thomas Massie just did something extraordinary on the House floor. He publicly named 3 specific men he believes should be investigated for Epstein crimes. One was listed by the FBI as a co-conspirator in child sex trafficking, then told he had no questions to answer. Meanwhile, other countries have arrested a prince, a former ambassador, and a prime minister, but in America, 0 arrests, despite 3 million pages of evidence. Let's watch this hearing. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach 100,000 subscribers.
Gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massie, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Congress created the Department of Justice. Congress funds the Department of Justice, and Congress is responsible for the oversight of the Department of Justice. When will we see justice? I'll tell you what I've not seen. I've not seen any arrests from the revelations in the Epstein Files, over 3 million documents describing horrible things, describing unspeakable things, so much of it redacted. Over 24 people have resigned, CEOs, members of government worldwide, but I haven't seen any arrests or investigations here in the United States from this Department of Justice. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, who has since been stripped of his royal titles due to his affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, has been arrested. Peter Mandelson, who previously served as UK's ambassador to the United States, resigned in disgrace from United Kingdom's House of Lords and the Labour Party, and he's been arrested. Former Prime Minister of Norway, Torbjørn Jagland, has been charged, but we don't see any charges, arrests, or investigations in the United States. What do we see? We see our FBI director celebrating in the locker room at the Olympics overseas. It's fine to be proud of this country, but we should be proud of this country because we have a system of justice that works, and yet we do not. Who are the men that should be investigated? I'll name them right here. Leon Black. You don't even have to see past the redactions to see that this man needs to be investigated. Jes Staley, accused of terrible things. It's right there in the files. Why is he not being investigated? And Leslie Wexner. Why did the FBI list him as a co-conspirator in their own documents in a child sex trafficking case and then tell him, according to him, that they had no questions for him? Why is that? Well, the Epstein Files Transparency Act requires the DOJ and the FBI to disclose to us their internal memos and emails about how they made those decisions, whether to prosecute or not prosecute. Yet they have not delivered those memos. And we still don't have the memos and documents and emails from 2008 to explain why Jeffrey Epstein was given such a light sentence in what would have been an open and shut case of child sex trafficking, which allowed him to go back and recommit these terrible crimes, create hundreds of more victims, and ensnare so many other people in his conspiracy. Where are those documents that describe those decisions? We need justice. We want the Department of Justice to get to work, and that's what they need to do now. Madam Speaker, I rise today to let the American people know that this government is under siege. All 3 branches of this government is under siege by lobbyists and lawyers from a German company named Bayer. They spent over $9 million lobbying the executive branch and the legislative branch so that they don't have to be liable for any damages that their herbicide causes, otherwise known as Roundup. And they're having some success. Now, they haven't had any success yet in this chamber to get that immunity. They've had some success in the state legislatures, which are also under siege, to get this immunity from liability. Look, the Constitution guarantees people a trial if they've been harmed. Why are we contemplating going against the Constitution? The Attorney General has opined favorably for this German company in front of the Supreme Court about getting rid of any liability that they should have for any damages. And The most recent thing that we've seen, the executive branch. By the way, the president's chief of staff and the president's attorney general work for one of the biggest lobbying firms that's received hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars from Bayer. And maybe that's why we've seen an executive order that says that the production of this chemical from this German company is a national defense priority. And we know why they're doing that. It's to keep them from having any liability. Everybody in this country deserves their day in court. This is wrong. We shouldn't succumb to the lobbyists, not in the executive branch, not in the judicial branch, and certainly not here in Congress and not in the state legislatures. But there's a lot of money at play. And I implore my colleagues to resist it and do not give them immunity. And I yield back.
The chair recognizes the woman from Minnesota, Ms. Morrison, for 5 minutes.
What just happened on the House floor is something you rarely see in Congress. Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky stood up and publicly named specific individuals he believes should be investigated for their involvement with Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise. Actual names of powerful men who appear throughout the Epstein files but face no consequences in the United States. Thomas opened by reminding everyone of a fundamental fact. Congress created the Department of Justice. Congress funds the Department of Justice, and Congress is responsible for oversight of the Department of Justice. So when he asks when we'll see justice, he's not making an abstract complaint. He's asking why the institution Congress created and funds isn't doing its job. Here's what Massie has seen. Over 3 million documents released from the Epstein files describing horrible, unspeakable things, so much of it redacted that the full scope remains hidden. And from those 3 million documents revealing an international sex trafficking operation, how many arrests has he seen in the United States? 0. How many investigations has the Department of Justice announced? 0. But it's not that no one is being held accountable. More than 24 people worldwide have resigned from positions of power, CEOs, government officials across multiple countries. The difference is what happens next. In other countries, resignations are followed by arrests and charges. Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, has been stripped of his royal titles due to his affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein and has been arrested. Peter Mandelson, who previously served as the UK's ambassador to the United States, resigned in disgrace from the United Kingdom's House of Lords and the Labour Party and has been arrested. Torbjorn Jagland, the former Prime Minister of Norway, has been charged with crimes related to the Epstein scandal. Meanwhile, in the United States, nothing. And what is the FBI Director Kash Patel doing while powerful Americans who appear in these files face no scrutiny? According to Massie, he's celebrating in the locker room at the Olympics overseas. Massie made clear it's fine to be proud of your country, but we should be proud because we have a system of justice that works. And right now we do not. Then Massie did something significant. He named names. 3 specific men he believes need to be investigated based on what's in the Epstein files. Leon Black. Massie said you don't even have to see past the redactions to know this man needs to be investigated. The unredacted portions alone contain enough to warrant scrutiny. Jes Staley. Massie stated he's accused of terrible things right there in the files. Not rumors, not speculation. Documented accusations in official FBI files. Leslie Wexner. This one is particularly damning. According to Massie, the FBI listed Wexner as a co-conspirator in their own documents in a child sex trafficking case. Then, according to Wexner himself, they told him they had no questions for him. Think about that. The FBI documents someone as a co-conspirator in child sex trafficking, then apparently decides they have nothing to ask him about. Massie pointed out that the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, requires the DOJ and FBI to disclose their internal memos and emails explaining how they made decisions about whether to prosecute these individuals or not. Those memos haven't been delivered. Congress passed a law requiring their disclosure, and the agencies are simply not complying. There's also the question of the 2008 documents. Jeffrey Epstein received an extraordinarily light sentence for what Massie described as an open and shut case of child sex trafficking. That sweetheart deal allowed Epstein to continue his crimes, creating hundreds more victims and ensnaring more people in his conspiracy. The internal documents explaining who made those decisions and why have never been released. Massie's central point was clear. Other countries are holding their powerful accountable. Arrests, charges, consequences, but in the United States, despite having 3 million pages of evidence, despite an FBI that investigated this for years, despite a law requiring transparency about prosecution decisions, there are no arrests, no charges, and no accountability. When Massie says this government is under siege, he's not exaggerating. When powerful interests can apparently avoid accountability, despite being named in FBI files as co-conspirators in child sex trafficking, the system isn't working. And when Congress passes laws requiring transparency and those laws are ignored, that's not dysfunction. That's institutional capture. You're watching Inside Politics. Hit subscribe and help us reach 100,000 subscribers and comment your thoughts.